We're delighted to be presenting this esteemed group of presenters to our audience today. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Ms. Dena Wiggins, President and CEO of the Natural Gas Supply Association. Dena?
Thank you very much. Do I have the slides up? There we go. Thank you. Let's just go dive into the next slide here. And I wanted to start talking here a little bit about natural gas production, because in the early days of the pandemic, and then as I want to say coming out of it, that may be premature, but that's going to be my optimistic view of coming out of it, that there's a lot of discussion about what was going on with production. And this is, I think, a good news story that we've got to tell, and I just want to make sure that we tell it, that production is up compared to 2020. And today, the estimate is that our producers are going to be producing a little over 90 BCF of gas. And that compared to last winter, it looks like January is going to be about 1.7 BCF higher on average than January of 2021. So this is all trending in the right direction, and it's a good story. Dialing back a little bit as to what happened last year, we all know demand was down because of the pandemic, and we also saw a fall off in the production of associated gas that comes along with the production of oil. Well, our analysts tell us that they're anticipating that as oil production continues to rise this year, that we will similarly see a rise in the production of associated gas. The other story that doesn't get enough play, in my opinion, is what happens with the drilled and uncompleted wells, DUCs. Now, a lot of people on this call know what those are, but there are a lot of people generally who've never heard of a DUC. And of course, it is a drilled and uncompleted well. And during the early days of the pandemic, we had an inventory of about 9,000 DUCs, drilled and uncompleted wells that were ready to be completed, but had not been completed. And in June of 2020, that number had dropped to under 6,000. So, and that makes sense, because when demand starts coming back, the fastest way for our producers to get more commodity supply back into the market is to go out and complete those wells that had been drilled but not completed. Those can be brought back on in 1 to 2 months, whereas it takes significantly longer, several months, to start and finish a complete new well job. So the fact that those DUCs are being completed is bringing some of that supply back. And again, we think there's plenty of supply to meet the demand, and there will continue to be plenty of supply to meet the demand. And if we could go to the next slide, please. The other part of the story that I think is worth pausing over is what has happened to production and prices. That even as production has grown, prices have declined. Now, we get a lot of press when it's a cold day in January and the spot prices are high at certain city gates, particularly in the Northeast, and I'll come back to that in a minute. I think it's important that we, as members of this community, educate policymakers and others about what that spot price really means. Our consumers, our industrials, our utilities have a variety of options as to how they can choose to purchase natural gas. They can enter into long-term contracts, they can enter into shorter-term contracts, they can do a deal based on an index, and obviously they can wait and buy on the spot market. And the way that we like to analogize this is sort of flying standby, that if you wait until the day before Christmas Eve to buy the plane ticket to go home to see mom, that is going to be an expensive plane ticket. In a similar fashion, those spot prices and a cold day in January are going to be high. Now, the data about how much gas is traded at those high prices, and the New York City Gate is one that often gets a lot of attention, is really hard to come by. But anecdotally, we believe that it's not that much gas typically that trades at those really high prices that grab the headlines. One of our producers, and this data is stale, but a number of years ago, said that the production that his company sold was typically only about 10 to 15% on the spot market. The rest was under different kinds of arrangements. Similarly, and again, this is also stale because the data is hard to come by, but in 2018, Navigant did actually it was RBN by then, did a study for us, Rick Smead, and he concluded that in the weather event of 2018, it was about 1 to 2% of the gas supply in the Northeast that was traded on the spot market. So I think it's important to put all of this in context, and that generally looking at it overall, recognizing that our customers, our consumers have options on how they choose to contract to buy the natural gas. And also looking at the long view, we need to look back to the years, and this is published data from EIA, that the average Henry Hub price in the winter of 2007 and 2008 was $8.05. So we're coming off more recently a very low price environment, and that makes some of the prices that we're seeing now, gives people pause and makes people talk about super high prices. But I think, again, it's important to bring this into context. In 2017, 2018, the average, this was the winter price, the average was $2.99. 2018 to 2019, it was $3.33. And 2019 to 2020, it was $2.08. So yes, prices are a little bit higher than that, but it's important to keep it into the historical context. And if we could go to the next slide, please. I love this slide because I think it really illustrates what the shale revolution has done. That yellow bar there clearly indicates the abundant supply and what a game changer the shale revolution has meant for our country. In 1966, the estimate was about 600 TCF of natural gas. And if that had remained static, we would perhaps have run out of natural gas. But this is really a story of technology. And the technology still keeps getting better and better. And that's why we see, even post-shale revolution, that yellow band in these charts continues to grow. So that in the most recent Potential Gas Committee estimate, we have 3,800 TCF of recoverable supply. And that is an enormous number. And again, we really believe that that number will continue to grow as our producers continue to get better and better about how they will produce this gas. As one of my former board chairmen used to say, we don't know what the next big thing is going to be in terms of being able to extract gas from the ground, but we know that it's coming. They will continue to innovate, continue to get better, and continue to put gas into the market. Next slide, please. One of the really beneficial aspects of this shale revolution is what it has done for U.S. industrials. Our outside consultants who do this work for us try to make sure that what they are looking at is real projects, not just pie in the sky, this might happen, we're planning this, but projects that are almost guaranteed to get off the ground. They really believe these are going to happen. Now, of course, things like the pandemic last year put a little hitch in some of the plans for some of these projects. But when this report was done for us in the fall of 2021, this is what the information they came up with, is that there are 18 new projects that'll come online, 3 expansions, 1 restart, and that this is 22 major industrial projects from 2021 to 2024. And that, again, is a good news story for American industry. As many of you know, I used to represent industrial manufacturers, and I have a soft spot in my heart for that, for those industrials who are trying to compete. And I think the natural gas story here in the United States helps them be competitive and stay competitive. If I could go to the next slide, please. And Charlie Riedel is going to follow me, so I'm not going to go too deeply into the LNG export story because that's where he's going to spend a lot of his time. But I do think it's important just to point out that with this abundant supply, we do have sufficient resources to serve not only the domestic market, but the export market. This is important for our trading partners. I also think it's very important as we in the United States try to be world leaders in addressing global climate change and all sorts of other environmental issues. We can help other countries meet their environmental goals by providing cleaner burning natural gas to them. And again, I'll leave that there and let Charlie follow up with some more details. And the next slide, please. Of course, it's not all good news for us. The sort of distressing news is the infrastructure picture. That it is, as everyone on this call knows, becoming increasingly difficult to cite major natural gas infrastructure projects. There's a total of 7.1 BCF a day of pipeline capacity that's either canceled or on hold in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast since 2018. We obviously need pipelines to get our gas to market. We obviously need pipelines in the Northeast to serve that market. There's plenty of gas sitting there in the Marcellus Shale. If we could only get it to the Northeast, I think it would be helpful to the people who live there in terms of the availability of this commodity and in terms of the prices that they're paying for power and other services. We just can't get it there easily. The other part of this story that I also find somewhat troublesome is that we track natural gas pipeline certificate applications that are being filed at the FERC. And it appears to us that since the early fall of last year, there has been a significant decline in the number of certificate applications that are being filed at FERC. I'm not sure why. I could speculate, and I won't, but that's troublesome because we do need that infrastructure. I don't know whether the pipelines are worried about the regulatory uncertainty at FERC. I'm not sure what's driving it, but it is troublesome to us, and it's something that we will continue to pay attention to. But I'm not going to leave this conversation on a downturn of the discussion. I want to leave on an up note. So if you can go to the next slide, please. We believe that natural gas has an important role to play, not only today, but into the future. We understand that there is a national, and as I alluded to earlier with the LNG conversation, a global conversation going on about environmental and climate change issues. We are doing our part. We believe that we are an important partner with renewables in reaching some of these goals. Natural gas can serve as an important backstop. It can firm up some of the intermittency that we see with some of the renewables. And we want to be partners. We think we are partners. And we think that that's an important role for us to play going forward now and into the future. We have supported carbon pricing for several years now, long before this administration came into power. So this is not just something that we came to lately. We are targeting emissions reductions. Our companies are investing billions in renewables and low carbon solutions. We're working on CCUS programs. We're working on certification programs for differentiated gas, or some call it responsibly sourced gas. We've got literally hundreds of projects that our members are pursuing individually. And I invite you to take a look at our website that details some of those. Literally, I would be talking for the rest of the afternoon if I started detailing all of the programs that our members have in place and are pursuing. But I invite you to take a look at that. So this is the good part of what we're doing and of the whole story of the natural gas industry right now. We know that there are some naysayers out there. I think we need to do a much better job of an industry of telling our story and telling how we can be a partner to renewables. We're all in this together. We're looking for a lower carbon energy future. It's an ambitious goal to reach net zero by 2050, but there are a lot of smart people working on this in our industry and in other industries, and I think we can get there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dena, for your presentation and your insight. I think I and others were encouraged by your optimistic view, although taking into consideration the less slightly optimistic infrastructure picture. If you have time, I would like to ask you a couple of questions, if you're okay with that.
Sure, absolutely.
Great. I had a couple of questions on your clean tech solutions and also your renewable energy sector, and you had mentioned that we'd be here for a while to address those. So I might go back to that time remaining. So I want to kind of tax you a little bit on a press release that you issued in January of 2021, supporting the U.S. rejoining the Paris Agreement. What did that action mean throughout last year and during COP26?
Well, we believe in the goals of Paris. We thought that it was time for the United States to get back in it. We, as the United States, as I said earlier in the LNG discussion, need to be global leaders. We are global leaders, and we need to be global leaders in this space as well. So it was something that our individual member companies had come to on their own, and we decided that as NGSA, that was something that we also wanted to pursue. Again, none of these issues are easy. I don't know that there's any one magic solution, but I think it's important that we put the goals out there, even if they are ambitious and even if they are hard to reach, and be forceful in our actions. And the actions speak louder than words. I have to say that I get frustrated sometimes when we're talking about the things that our member companies and our industry are doing, and we get accused of greenwashing and not being sincere. I have to say I've never heard any one of our member companies indicate that there's anything more than sincerity in this effort from the top. They're from the CEOs all the way down. This is something our member companies are committed to and are working hard on.
Thank you for that, Dena. Just one final question. We're getting close, but I would like to ask this question. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the comments that you guys make at this event guide a lot of the discussions that we have with our overseas partners. And a lot of discussions we're having now are dealing with renewable energy. So I'd be interested in knowing, according to EIA, natural gas and renewable energy together will generate about 76% of all US electricity in 2050. How does NGSA work with the renewable energy sector today?
Well, I think our member companies are ready, willing, standing by. We are there. We are in the market. We are a partner with them. I think the renewable energy industry has some of the same infrastructure challenges that we on the gas side have with pipelines. I mean, in order to really fulfill the promise of the penetration of renewable energy, we're going to need more transmission lines in this country, and siting those, I think, is probably even harder. I was going to say as hard, probably harder than siting interstate natural gas pipelines. So we've got some challenges, but we want to be supportive. Our member companies are investing in renewable energy projects. And that's how we intend to partner going forward.
Wonderful. Dena, thank you as always for your comments. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I will continue to ask questions, but I don't want to take any more of Charlie's time, and I'm sure he'll follow up on some of the presentation topics that you talked about today. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.